me because I was too kind of like, I was very full in the face.
She called herself the world's first supermodel, and the fashion industry laughed. They painted her as delusional, difficult. They has been desperate for relevance. For decades, her name became a punchline. Her legacy reduced to reality TV outbursts and outrageous claims. But here's what they don't tell you about Janice Dickinson. While the fashion world was busy erasing her from history, she was telling truths that no one wanted to hear. She was exposing predators that everyone else protected. She was fighting battles that wouldn't be recognized for another 40 years. The woman they called crazy was actually prophetic. The industry that rejected her claims about being the first supermodel now admits she might have been right all along. And those outrageous stories about abuse and exploitation, they turned out to be heartbreakingly accurate. So what really happened to Janice Dickinson? How did a girl from Brooklyn become fashion royalty, then get banished from her own kingdom? And why is the industry that once shunned her now quietly admitting she was right about everything? The truth is more shocking than any reality TV moment she ever delivered. Origins and discovery, Brooklyn, New York, 1955. Janice Doreen Dickinson was born into chaos. Her father, Ray, was an abusive alcoholic who terrorized the family. Her mother, Jenny, was a former beauty queen turned housewife, trying to hold everything together while her husband destroyed it piece by piece. The Dickinson household was a war zone. Ray would come home drunk and violent, taking out his failures on whoever was closest. Janice learned early that beauty could be both a weapon and a target. She was stunning even as a child, but that beauty made her father suspicious, jealous, controlling. By her teens, Janice knew she had to escape. Brooklyn felt like a prison, her family like quicksand. She'd study fashion magazines like textbooks, memorizing every face, every pose, every pathway out of her nightmare. Her first break came through pure desperation. At 18, she walked into Wilhelmina Models in Manhattan with a handful of Polaroids and the kind of confidence that only comes from having nothing left to lose. Most agencies took one look at her ethnic features, an ethnic name, and passed. This was the early 1970s when blonde and waspy was the only acceptable beautiful. But Wilhelmina Cooper saw something different. Janice had this raw, sexual energy that jumped off the page. She wasn't pretty in the conventional sense. She was arresting, magnetic, dangerous. The early shoots were revelation. Working with photographers like Richard Avedon and Helmut Newton, Janice brought an intensity that had never been seen in fashion photography. She wasn't just wearing clothes, she was telling stories. Dark, complex, adult stories that made viewers stop and stare. Paris became her launching pad. The French fashion world was more open to unconventional beauty, more willing to experiment with models who brought attitude along with their looks. Janice didn't just pose, she performed. Every photo shoot became a psychological drama. By 1975, she was booking major campaigns, gracing magazine covers, working with the biggest names in fashion. But more than that, she was changing what modeling could be. Before Janice, models were supposed to be blank canvases. She turned herself into the painting. That's when she made the claim that would follow her forever. I am the world's first supermodel. Peak fame and industry battles. The claim seemed outrageous at the time, but look at the evidence. Before Janice Dickinson, models were nameless faces selling clothes. After her, they became personalities, brands, celebrities in their own right. She demanded creative control, negotiated her own deals, and turned photo shoots into collaborative art. Her Vogue covers throughout the late 70s were revolutionary. Working with Helmut Newton, she created images that were more like film stills than fashion photography. There was always a story happening behind her eyes, something darker and more complex than simple beauty. The Versace campaigns made her a global icon. Gianni Versace understood what she brought to fashion, that combination of elegance and edge that no one else could deliver. She wasn't just modeling his clothes, she was embodying his vision of powerful sexual femininity. But Janice's success came with a price that no one talks about. Behind the glamorous shoots and magazine covers, the fashion industry was a predator's playground. photographers who expected sexual favors, designers who treated models like property, agents who stole money and manipulated vulnerable young women. Janice fought back in ways that shocked everyone. When a famous photographer tried to assault her during a shoot, she didn't stay quiet. She called him out publicly, demanded he be fired from the campaign. The industry's response wasn't support, it was punishment. Difficult became the word that followed her everywhere. Too demanding, too opinionated, too willing to speak up when things went wrong. In an industry that expected women to smile and comply, Janice was a walking rebellion. The cocaine was everywhere in those days. Fashion weeks fueled by drugs, after parties that lasted until dawn, an entire culture built on substances that kept everyone thin, energetic, and compliant. Janice partook like everyone else, but she was honest about it while others pretended it wasn't happening. Her relationships became tabloid fodder. High-profile romances with musicians, actors, photographers. Each relationship scrutinized, dissected, turned into evidence of her instability. The media loved her drama, but hated her honesty about the industry that created it. By the mid-'80s, the backlash was in full swing. Younger models were being promoted as more professional, meaning more willing to stay quiet about abuse. Janice's bookings decreased, not because she couldn't deliver, but because she'd made too many enemies by telling the truth. The financial exploitation was devastating. Agents and managers who'd promised to protect her had been stealing for years. Money from major campaigns disappeared into other people's accounts. The woman who'd commanded tens of thousands per shoot found herself struggling to pay rent. But the worst part wasn't the money or the lost work. It was watching the industry rewrite history, pretending that her contributions had never happened. The same photographers who'd built their careers on her images now claimed she was just another model. Janice was being erased from the story she'd helped create, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Reinvention and redemption. By the 1990s, Janice Dickinson had become fashion's cautionary tale. The industry whispered about her like a ghost story, warning young models about what happened when you pushed too hard, spoke too loudly, demanded too much. But Janice refused to disappear quietly. When the fashion world closed its doors, she kicked down new ones. Reality television was emerging as a cultural force, and Janice saw opportunity where others saw exploitation. Her appearance as a judge on America's Next Top Model shocked everyone. Here was this legendary figure from fashion's golden age now playing the villain on a reality show. The media painted it as a desperate grab for relevance, a fallen icon reduced to TV theatrics. But watch those episodes again, and you'll see something different. Janice wasn't just being outrageous for ratings, she was teaching. When she screamed at contestants about the realities of the modeling world, she was preparing them for battles she'd fought alone for decades. Her famous outbursts weren't random, they were warnings. The fashion industry will chew you up and spit you out, she'd tell wide-eyed hopefuls. You need to be tougher, smarter, more prepared than I was. Behind the reality TV chaos, Janice was struggling with demons that had haunted her since childhood. The drug addiction that had started as industry survival had spiraled into dependency. The trauma from her abusive father and years of industry exploitation was finally catching up. She hit rock bottom multiple times. Rehab stints, financial ruin, health scares that should have killed her. The tabloids documented every fall with glee. Each headline another nail in her coffin of public opinion. Then came the moment that would vindicate everything she'd been saying for decades. In 2014, Janice came forward with allegations against Bill Cosby, claiming he had drugged and sexually assaulted her in 1982. The reaction was swift and brutal. She was called a liar, an attention seeker, a has-been trying to stay relevant. But Janice didn't back down. She testified in court, faced cross-examination, endured public humiliation. When dozens of other women came forward with similar stories when Cosby was finally convicted, Janice's courage was vindicated. The Now Me Too movement arrived like a tidal wave, and suddenly Janice's decades of difficult behavior made perfect sense. All those times she'd called out photographers for inappropriate conduct, all those battles with designers who treated models like objects, all those warnings about industry predators, she'd been telling the truth the entire time. Cancer came in 2016, breast cancer that required aggressive treatment. The woman who'd spent her life obsessed with physical perfection had to face the possibility of losing it all. But even bald from chemotherapy, even weakened by treatment, Janice kept fighting. Her memoir, Everything About Me is Fake and I'm Perfect, became a bestseller. Not because people wanted more celebrity gossip, but because they finally understood her story. The crazy reality TV judge was actually a survivor who'd been trying to warn everyone. Today, young models seek out her interviews, studying her career like a masterclass in survival. Fashion historians are quietly admitting she might have been right about being the first supermodel after all. So what really happened to Janice Dickinson? She committed the ultimate sin in an industry built on silence. She told the truth before anyone was ready to hear it. The fashion world spent decades painting her as crazy because admitting she was sane meant confronting their own complicity. Every time she called out a predator, every time she exposed the industry's dark secrets, every time she demanded to be treated with basic human dignity, she was threatening a system that profited from exploitation. Her claim about being the world's first supermodel wasn't delusion, it was historical fact. Before Janice, models were anonymous mannequins. She turned modeling into performance art, transformed fashion photography into storytelling, and proved that a woman's face could be worth millions if she fought for it. But being first comes with a price that history rarely acknowledges. Pioneers don't get credit, they get crucified. The women who come after get called revolutionaries, while the ones who broke the ground get called difficult. The Not a Me Too movement didn't just vindicate Janice's assault allegations, it vindicated her entire career. Every outrageous story, every exaggerated claim about industry abuse, every warning she'd tried to give turned out to be understated, if anything. Her legacy isn't just about modeling or fashion or even survival. It's about the cost of being first, the price of speaking truth, and the long journey from villain to vindicated. She proved that sometimes being crazy is just being right too early. Janice Dickinson didn't just survive the fashion industry's attempts to destroy her, she exposed why they needed to try. She wasn't the problem, she was the solution the industry wasn't ready for. And maybe that's what being a true pioneer means, not just changing the game, but paying the price for everyone who comes after. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story behind Janice Dickinson's rise, fall, and vindication, hit that subscribe button for more untold truths about the icons who changed everything. I'll see you in the next one.